I saw it move. Transportation Policy Committee meeting to order for November the 4th. Would you call roll, please, sir?
Catch up to you with my microphone,
Okay.
so you can all hear me. Judge Krebs,
Here.
Mr. Charlie Zahn, Judge Canales, not here, Mayor Guardo,
Present.
Mayor Scro, Mr. Martinez, Mr. Olivares. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, sir. Public comments? Any public comments at this time?
We had none at the office, so
None at the
we're up to
office.
date as of 2:02.
Yeah, comes in time, let me know, okay? We'll get to it, okay. Item 3, approval of our August the 5th regular meeting that we had. Is there any corrections or additions or discussion on those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
I got a motion by Mayor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Mr. Olivares. Any other concerns? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, under item 4, we've got discussion and possible action. We got 3 items to go here. First, 4A is ratification of Amendment 1 to the employment agreement for the Transportation Policy Director. We'll review it, discuss it, and approve it. So, Mr. McDonald, you want to do these?
Sure. After long last, the first employment agreement, Amendment 1, catches up all the actions you took about a year ago. My employment agreement makes sure we have things signed off by the chairman and myself. So Amendment 1 is catching up that action you took about a year ago. And it's just subject for your approval, ratification. It is your approval.
Okay, is there any questions, Mr. Nolan?
No questions.
Okay, no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I got a motion by Mayor Guajardo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Martinez. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, 4B, ratification on Amendment 2 to the employment agreement of Transportation Planning Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that you completed Amendment Number 1, we can have Amendment 2, which was built on Amendment 1. Your action of a couple months ago, as part of my annual review, led to these changes to my employment agreement. Pretty straightforward. Just solidifies your action, and again, signed off by the chairman and myself, and we recommend approval, awaiting your action.
If there's no discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval of Amendment Number 2.
Move to approve.
I got a motion by Mr. Olivares. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Martinez. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item C, fiscal year 2021-24 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment 4, inclusion of additional transit project. Ms. Casper, I think you got this one, right?
I do. Good afternoon. The request for this item is to release the proposed amendment for 1 month public comment period. It is not to approve it. It's just sending it out for a 1 month comment period. This proposed amendment has 2 parts. The first part is amending in FTA Section 5310 funding. 5310 funding is for enhancing mobility of seniors and the disabled, and it is apportioned directly to designated recipients of urban areas, which the RTA is the designated recipient in our region. They selected 4 projects for these funds. The 4 projects are the Rural Economic Assistance League Access, which is operation type, Rural Economic Assistance League IMAP, then the Coastal Bend Center for Independent Living purchase of service. They're having buses run, and then the Coastal Bend Center Independent Mobility Management, and that's to organize the trips. The second part of the amendment is amending in just under $41 million in COVID relief funds into pools. Are there any questions? Again, this is for a 1 month public comment period.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Comment?
Move to approve.
Okay,
Motion, move to approve the amendment.
okay, I got a motion by Mr. Martinez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivares. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 5, discussion and comments. We have 4 here. First of all, we have a draft program guidance and procedure, surface transportation block set aside, funding, Cat 9, call for projects. Mr. McDonald, I think you got this.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, one of the great things that you all get to do is start a process to award money to get some projects done. This one is about 4.5 million, so not the big one yet, but soon we'll talk about hundreds of millions of dollars. But this one particular category is covered in your cover memo, and I'll have to ask the IT folks. I don't know, Victor, did we load up the packet? Okay, I'll go with what's in your packet. I'll refer to page numbers. But in the cover memo, what we did is we outlined a little bit what's new to the discussion from the MPO. Your technical advisory committee also had talked about this. Now today is I'll have to correct the memo. This is not for approval today. We're getting ahead of ourselves. On the original timeline today was to issue that call for projects and approve it. We don't want to hand you a 30, 40-page document and have you approve it without going through a little bit of a cycle. So the Technical Advisory Committee is going to see it again. They do have some comments on 2 things, the guidance as well as the application form, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. But the cover memo talks about two big things that we haven't talked in depth last time we did this. The federal program has different entities allowed to submit for projects. So the normal fare, local entities and governments, but school districts are also eligible. So there's more people that can apply to our process to get awarded funds for what also is in the memo, a variety of different types of projects. So it's not for just pedestrian or bicycle. I'll go through it, and the guidance talks a little blurb about all the different types of projects that can be funded. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of them because you can read that at your leisure as the public's going to read it. The Technical Advisory Committee is going to read it. But we didn't make it up. The MPO staff, we borrowed, and thanks to TxDOT. TxDOT did this similar process for the whole state of Texas minus the metro areas. Of course, we're one of the metro areas. So we adopted their process, and we modified it to be custom for our MPO. And so the guidance in the application form, if any of you were part of the rural application process for this same Category 9 funding, it'll look awfully familiar. But we scrubbed out all the rural parts. We made it applicable to our MPO. We tied in all the performance measures, all the requirements that any entity that applies for these funds would have to follow to receive the portion of the 4.5 million that you'll award. We have you awarding it next year. I think it's in May, but we'll look at the calendar in a minute. So the guidance, and just for the audience, I think they have it. It has a colorful color. The table of contents is certainly something that's clickable if you go onto our website. And again, we encourage folks to go to our website to see a lot of the details of how we're going to prioritize these projects, and then you all will award the projects. Now on page 2, bottom of page 2, you see our timeline for going through the process, leading eventually to next May, that you're going to approve $4.5 million worth of transportation projects in only this one category. And so you can see on the calendar, next month we're going to ask you to approve it, and then we'll issue the call for projects, and we'll send it to everybody we can think of that could be eligible. So we'll email, send letters, call. We'll get the word out that this process will be underway, of course, after you release it next month. So we'll, again, bring this back to you with any changes. We also know that this is pretty dense topic. There's a lot of working parts for applicants, whether they're new entities or there's new types of projects that come in. We're offering, and we are going to schedule 2 workshops with the Technical Advisory Committee, and other entities can come to that. You all can come to that and listen to the details. But we're going to have 2 workshops at the regular TAC meeting, so they don't have to schedule a new meeting, but we'll set some time to walk through any questions they may have or others that may have questions with the process, the dollars, and the timing. So we'll do that, and we'll report back to you as we get information along the process. And then in January, after the holiday season, late January, we're going to have the applications due. So our original schedule had it really right after the new year. We thought that was a little tight. So we gave everyone a little bit more time to get this in. It just shortens the time frame that staff has to look at the application, has to provide draft analysis, give that to the Technical Advisory Committee. We'll give that same analysis to you as we go along in the process. So when it's all said and done, you'll be right there with us understanding the process, what came in, how we evaluated, how we may have kicked out something that's ineligible, because the guidance is very clear. It says what's not eligible. And some of those have changed under federal law. So some more of the programs or doing more programs versus building things, some of those are not eligible for these dollars anymore. So it's all in the guidance. So if anyone has questions, they can call us. We can walk them through on our website. We can sit and talk to them. So this is a multi-month process. So today we're just looking for any comments you may have on schedule, eligibility. The next page on page 3 talks about the funding. Three things on the funding. We had prior projects that you all awarded a couple of years ago. Those projects have not moved forward in enough time that we pulled the money back in for those projects and added it to the 4.5 million total. Those projects that did not move forward, they can reapply, but some of the money is getting a little old, and as you all know, federal money sometimes expires. Usually it's about 4 years, so we don't want to cross that line. So we brought all the money from past projects, and I think there was 3 of them that came back in. We have the new funding allocation that TxDOT came up with for Category 9 as part of their normal process of a 10-year, their UTP. They update it every year. So the funding amounts of these federal funds are as current as we have them. So that 4.5 million, we may get a little bit more as time goes on, but we thought we'd just be a little conservative and award 4.5 million. And if there's a little extra, that could be used for cost overruns or maybe some small projects. But this is, again, we'll get there when we know more about the projects. So the funding is outlined and discussed on page 3. Next page I'll take you to is page 4. Starts the whole discussion on project eligibility. And so this is where it talks about all the different types of projects. I'm not going to cover them all, but you can see the normal ones that bicycle and pedestrian facilities, programs to teach folks, kids most likely, in K through 8. You can do programs to educate kids on how to ride bikes safely on the various systems. You can construct turnouts with this. You can deal with some outdoor advertising. There's some also things you can do with stormwater runoff. So a lot of different categories. All your staff, all the entity staff, they know about these, so they're kind of looking into your needs at the local governments to see if some of the needs match up to this funding in those categories. I talked about on page 7, the middle of the page is the ineligible activities. So just 2 paragraphs of what's no longer eligible. And so that's there. It's not a lot, but again, we remind folks to look at it. So don't fill out the application. If they do, we encourage folks to call us and we'll give them a sense of, is it ineligible or eligible? And if it's close, we'll say, let's move forward with it. So our goal, again, as staff is to get all projects in, get them all evaluated, make them strong projects, and get the funding awarded by you as soon as we can next May. Next quick section I'll highlight on page 9. One of the things that our federal funding that comes through TxDOT, it comes with requirements. So generally it's performance goals for all the projects. So we've got to take all the performance goals we had in our long-range plan, in our short-range plan, or our transportation improvement program over 4 years. We got to evaluate all these projects according to what you adopted as what's important to the MPO. So that's built into this process. It starts on page 10, so everyone can see how we're going to evaluate. And starting on the bottom of page 10, we have each of those goals in our long-range plan. We assigned first a description of how we're going to evaluate, and then we assigned a point value. So everyone can see the draft version of who gets what points. So when folks fill out the application form, if they are good grant writers or creative writers, they're going to go for the maximum points. So they'll see how to get most points, and then they'll try to match it up. But some things they can't do. They can't provide additional money because that's not their call of the grant writer. So they have to look through the criteria, check on the points, and do their best to get the most points. But the good part is, as the staff reviews it, the technical advisory committee reviews it, you all review it, the public gets to see it, they can read along with the application and almost assign points. So it takes the mystery out. It's not a black box of who gets points and who's going to be prioritized. So after we assign all the points, we'll run it through your technical committee, public process, you'll approve it. But if you'll remember, in our long-range plan and our short-range plan, you as the MPO directors, you can jockey things up and down based on some stated value. Like, this project actually has more money. A parks grant is going to make this trail project get done faster. So for that reason, you may want to move it up to make sure it gets funded. So you have that flexibility. You don't have to go with the scoring point value verbatim. You can jockey a little bit. So you have that ability. And so folks that have the projects, they'll encourage the technical folks to use professional judgment, but also you'll use your judgment as you get to the funding when we get down to it. And so, again, this is multi-month. It's something that's not going to happen right away. One of the last piece I'll talk about on page 14, we repeated what TxDOT put in, all the requirements of having to get advanced funding agreements and contracting and all that we put in the application guidance, so everybody knows what they have to do to get this $1 million, $500,000, or $4 million if they get all the money. They each have to follow the guidance, and we lay it out in our guidance. So people, as they read it, they can just walk through it. They can see they have to do right-of-way things and environmental clearance. And then finally, in the appendices, we talk about it's federal money, comes through the state. As I said, you got to follow the federal rules, the state rules, and then follow our guidance, which is built on those sets of rules. And then there's no surprises. I mean, we can almost guess the outcome if we all track along and award points. But we'll go through the process. We expect probably 10 or 15 projects to come in. But given the eligibility for different types of entities and the different types of projects, we may get 30 projects. We just don't know. And so we know there are projects out there. There are projects in your long-range plan. There's projects in your TIP that have this funding assigned to it. So we would imagine those projects will make sure that they're covered, they're funded, and may or may not have to come back through this process. So I think that's the last thing I wanted to, Appendix B. This is a preview of your next agenda item. To help wrestle our discussion, your discussion, with comparing those competing goals. Now, all the goals have value and they're important, but we try to wrestle with, is safety as important as maintaining the system? So we had some of you did the online exercise. We call it a pairwise comparison. Craig will talk about that in the next item. But we lay out why we do that to wrestle with the competing priorities of the evaluation system. And as we say, we have the point value, but after the point value, we start looking at weighting. Like, should safety be double as important as a capacity improvement? Should safety be triple of maintaining the system? So we had you do that exercise, but again, in this guidance, we walk folks through, said this is why we do that. And the public will be able to do what you did online with through the survey of having that same struggle of looking at different things. And finally, the last attachment is the application form. It has the yellow boxes, and I can show to different folks. The application form, as I said, it was built on the statewide rural competition that TxDOT did. We customized it for our MPO, and so all the different boxes are scalable. If you start typing in there, it's a Word document. So if you type and go line after line, it'll keep expanding. But again, we take it section by section. So whoever fills this out can see clearly what's going to be evaluated. If you compare it back to the guidance, you can almost pick your own points. But we're not going to presuppose the outcome. Folks have to walk through the different components of the application form. And then the final one, which is interesting, is we let them come up with a cost estimate of the project. So everyone understands, is this a $500,000 project? Is it a $1 million project? Is there other money coming? Is it a joint venture? So the public, you all will understand these projects as well as everybody. And we'll get the applications in, as I said, at the end of January, so it's not imminent. But we want to give everyone a chance to comment on the forms, the application forms, and the guidance. So that is what we're asking today. We know we have comments from your technical advisory committee. We'll talk to them in about 2 weeks. And once we get that information, we'll report that back to you next month. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. McDonald on program guidance and procedures?
And again, no action today, just any questions. And if you have email us afterwards, we're happy to take those.
No question for me, but I do have just a comment, just to emphasize, to make sure the local governments who are thinking about maybe submitting some projects, just remember it that this is a federal reimbursement type category. It's not money up front. So you're reimbursed up to 80% of your total cost. So that's when we start talking categories, you're not used to hearing that, but for category 9, that's the way it's administered.
Spend it, then we'll get it back to you.
So you get a penny of federal dollars, you have to follow the whole federal process as well, not something that maybe a local government is used to doing, right? So you need to weigh that when you decide whether you want to submit for these projects to category 9 or do it in-house through your local government process. Just keep that in mind.
It's a good point, because I know many of you received COVID relief money. That was 100% federal. And that just money came out, right? This is Valente is correct. It's a reimbursement. Got to follow all the rules, and the document gets lengthy because we reported a lot of that. But it's an important distinction. As we talk, you all award the project. You don't give the money out. And the local governments, the entities, they pay for it and get reimbursed up to 80%. And so that's
Okay, good deal.
Absolutely. It's just make sure there's no surprises.
Right.
Because I think the policy board, we don't want to get to a point where we approve projects and then it's a surprise to a local entity, because eventually you have to sign an advance funding agreement with TxDOT, and if that's not signed, knowing your responsibilities, and the project never moves, and it just sits there tying up money, which we don't want to do.
Good point. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to 5B, report on the TPC payer-wise comparison of the 2045 MTP goals. Mr. Casper.
Good afternoon again. So as we evaluate the projects in a competitive format, we know that all the goals that we have are not equal. Some are more equal than others. We have 8 adopted goals in our MTP. In a brief summary, safety, maintenance, congestion, equity, improving the economy, improving the community, efficient investments, and freight are just, if I were to do a one-word summary, those are the 8. We asked the TAC and yourselves to complete a pairwise comparison, which was more important, A or B. A or C, A or D, B or C, B or D, and we went through that. The TAC has completed it. I have gotten 5 of the TPCs back. This is still a pretty small sample size, and so we need to, if I would like some guidance, to figure out, should we blend the TAC and the TPC rankings as one single survey? Should we keep them separate so you can see them both? Should we seek additional importance ranking of what's more important? I will tell you that your the rankings that came from the TPC are different, and which is completely to be expected from the TAC. The one example is you all ranked maintenance most important. The TAC ranked safety most important, but maintenance second most important. So they're close, but not straight across the board. So I would like some guidance as to how to proceed with that, because the next step is a little more involved. After we get the first to last in importance, we need to figure out how much more important or less important is something. And that is, what you do with that is you take 100 points and you start at the least most important and you give it 1 or 2 points or whatever it is. And then you spend your 100 points going up. So if something's twice as important as the thing next down, you get twice as many points. It's easier to go from the bottom up. So 1 point for the first one, for the 8th most important. If the 7th is twice as important, you give it 2 points, 4 points, 8 points, if you want to double every time. If you want everything to be the same, you'd give them 12 or 13 points if you say they're the same. So that would be the next step, but the guidance on what to do with how to determine what is the ranking is what I'm thinking now, some discussion about that.
Put us on the spot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you maybe knee-jerk response, just hearing this for the first time as a question. I would maybe recommend using a combination of both TAC and Policy Board, since the Policy Board has the opportunity to rearrange projects
Yep. And
at a later time anyway.
And so what we could do is we could blend them together, bring it back to you and say, here's what the combination 1st to 8th. And you can look at them and say, you know what, 5 and 6, let's reverse those. Or, number 8, that should be number 4. That is very precisely, but thank you very much for that. We will do that for you next month. I guess that's it. Are there any other questions, comments on the process?
Questions, comments about it? Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, 5C, Federal Certification Review, Initial Observation and Comments. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, the MPO staff and some of the TPC members had the enjoyment of going through the once every 4 years federal certification of the MPO activities. So the last one was done 4 years ago, a year and a half before I got here. So we got to walk through some of the items that predated my time here, which is always interesting in the process. Craig and I have been through MPO certification a lot of times, so nothing really surprised us with their methodology. What I put in your packet was the letter that Judge Krebs got to announce the process and the dates for the process. We also put in your packet the outline of the schedule over the 3 days. It was 2 half days and 1 full day, and the full day was truly a full day. The folks, it was done virtually, and we had probably 15, 16 folks on the call at any one time, including Federal Highways, Federal Transit, TxDOT. And Federal Highways brings in experts from around the country on a virtual call. So when we're answering things of how do you integrate performance-based planning, how do you do your congestion management process? If some may remember, that was a finding against the MPO a couple years ago, that we did not have an appropriate congestion management process, and therefore we had a 1-year deadline. And when I got here, that was my first task to get done, create, and we have it on our website, and they really like it, our congestion management process. So we click that off. The Federal Highways, they always go backwards to say, what did we write you up last time, and did you correct that? So we cleared all that easily, and we answered all their questions. The format we did, and for those who were online, I know Valente was on for a little bit. What we did is we took it as an opportunity to kind of practice our website and our documents. So if we can show Federal Highways, Federal Transit, TxDOT, our documents through our website and quickly link on things like our long-range plan, the TIP or the short-range plan, our CMP, all the acronyms and all our documents, then we can do that with the public. And we told the the reviewers that we do this with the media. So if the media comes in and they want to hear or know about something, we'll go online with them and we'll show them where things are, like where the funding is, where the list of prioritized projects are, what was our process, how do we do public involvement, how do we do different things with our program addressing discrimination. Walking through all that, I think in our debrief with them, we had it 9 o'clock last Thursday, before the phone calls that they had with the three of you, was they gave us a good debrief on a lot of the topics. One of the ones that they really want to follow up with is that it's that acronym PAD, or Program Addressing Discrimination, on our website. It's a collection of all those federal required documents, limited English proficiency, Title VI. Let's see, what was the other one? Yes, the new one. Yeah, so there's not even rules and regs on that one. But they were happily surprised that an MPO had actually combined all those documents into one document. And so they're all required. We have to do it. So when their technical experts saw it, she was excited to share it with Federal Highways to see if other MPOs had done a similar thing. So we're hoping that's a good write-up when they eventually give us the report on our activities. So they obviously like that we cleared the congestion management process. So that CMP document is really something that we think is useful. And as we update it, we'll give you information and certainly share that with the public and our partners. I think we expect a few things that are going to be congratulations or attaboys or, job well done things. But there's a few things that they're probably note, and we'll see what they come back. And now they're not going to get back to us right away. I think the estimate's 6 to 8 months by the time they write their report. Last time it took, I don't want to say 3 years, but it took almost 3 years for them to come back with the report on their certification. The MPO was certified last time with the finding and the corrective action that had to be done. So when that report comes back, Judge Krebs is coming to you. So please share that, and they'll copy us back. But look for it probably next spring, summer. And that's normal. I mean, they want to go through the bases. They want to look at all their notes, and they want to get to the report. Now, one thing they did mention, and I'll mention here, one of their technical experts said, okay, so we do kind of work with the RTA. And so if we're doing RTA work, that's within our 2-county area-ish, not quite the full counties. But we've been asked by TxDOT, who's doing a 11-county, more rural area public transportation plan that others are doing. So Federal Highway said, now your planning money doesn't go that far out. And we said, absolutely not. And so we are part of that process now, but it's totally funded by TxDOT, who hired Texas Transportation Institute to do that 11-county plan. When that plan is done next year, we're going to be approached, and we'll bring it back to here for your approval. TxDOT's going to ask the MPO to be the guardians or keepers of that 11-county plan. And TxDOT will give us separate state money to keep an eye on that plan. So it'll be outside of our planning document. So when Federal Highway says, wait a minute, you can't go 11 counties, TxDOT can give us money as an MPO, and they're proposing it. They haven't given us the money. We'll have to put it in our work program. So when that happens, we'll bring you an item on our work program, probably next year sometime. And so as we participate in that process now, we're participating, but more focused on our 2-county area. But they like the fact that I've done those 11 county plans in my career, so they like to have my knowledge on that. So when they have a meeting, I can dial in, I can listen, I can see what they've got going on. So Federal Highways and their certification, we just want to make sure that we're not using the Federal Highway money for purposes outside. Now, you all know we have a strategic reserve. That's another source of funds for us to participate in that if we need to do things outside our normal activities. So it's not a huge fund, but it's enough to augment some of the work outside our traditionally funded things in our planning process. So that was one example that they said, you know, caution. So the certification review, they'll have other cautionary things. They'll walk down the list of things that, what we did, how we did it, and things that we can improve on, things that they say, you're really doing a good job, keep doing those that way. And so we expect they'll have some things that they'll talk about, maybe in our funding allocation process, because the federal reviewers this time are new to the process. So and they're new to Texas, so they may not understand the funding of how TxDOT funding works and how MPO funding works. So they may write something up on our process, nothing in a bad way, but just more of a suggestion. So again, next spring, next summer, when the report comes out, Judge Krebs, you get it first, because they don't send it to us. It's like, well, if they send it to us, we may lose it if it's bad. But we expect it's going to be a mostly very, very favorable report. They'll have some recommendations. We do not expect any findings like last time was that please have a congestion management process developed soon. We think we've covered the bases, but again, they get to tell us what they have. And in their debrief, they didn't have anything that was of serious note. And so it was we thought a good process, and obviously some of you participated in that process, and if you had any comments, we'd like to hear those sometime. But that's my report on that item.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments?
No.
Okay. We will go ahead and move on then to 5D, our Regional Traffic Safety Task Force. Mr. McDonald?
Turn my agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In August, I think we reported this back. We may not reported it through the memo. I don't think we've spoken with you. Texas is setting up a statewide traffic safety task force, for lack of a better term. That committee, we heard last week, that committee has been formed. We'll talk about that in a second. But the statewide committee is going to do their charge, and we list the things. We give you a link to their press release, their news release. It's the last page of your packet. So that was the end of August. So we thought as an MPO, we should set up a mirror regional task force dealing with all the traffic safety issues. Now, you've heard us talk about we have to do traffic safety analysis as part of our normal course of action. So we are giving you today just the background. In your bylaws, you get to set up an ad hoc committee. We're proposing for you to take action next month to set up an ad hoc committee that is the Traffic Safety Task Force. So all of your technical staff will bring the police department in. We may bring the school district police in. Anyone who's got a stake in traffic safety and enforcement and across the spectrum of all the traffic accidents and analysis, we want to put a committee together. Next month, we'll bring you proposed entities to fulfill that. And we would imagine the entities will provide their own people. We don't want to pick people, but we want to present to you, here's the overview. And in your memo, we talk about here's the kinds of things they're going to do, the kind of entities we're going to propose to you all. Again, we're taking it through the technical committee. They'll have recommendations of who ought to be on this regional task force, and then you'll get it again next month for approval. Now, once we have them seated, we'll have them meet, and we'll hopefully report out what the agenda for the statewide committee is, so we can feed our region into the statewide effort. Now, again, I alluded to the Texas Transportation Commission. They mentioned last Thursday that the committee actually has been formed. The committee has met. We're trying to figure out how we can tie into that committee. In the news release in your packet, they said that each MPO is going to have a seat at that statewide task force. We were going to talk to you all today about if we got more information from the statewide task force, do they want, say, Judge Krebs as the chairman to be on that task force on a statewide level? Now, remember the transportation commissioners, 2 of them are on that statewide. So do we want elected officials, appointed officials to represent the MPO? And if so, okay, how do we get someone named from our TPC to that statewide committee? So we're following up with TxDOT to figure that out. We also wanted to see if some of the members are MPO members. So my counterparts from 3 or 4 MPOs around the state, they're on the statewide task force. I'm trying to reach out to them through the Texas Association of MPOs. How did they get selected, or did they self-select? And so there's one member from the Dallas MPO that is titled as the point of contact for all the MPOs, which is a little different from the press release that said each MPO was going to be on this statewide task force. Now, the connection is important because as part of that press release, to address safety, the Transportation Commission, they've allocated $600 million for traffic safety items. That's a lot of money. They're now looking in categories 5, 7, and 8. Now, those funding category 7, you get to allocate. And so when we see a statewide committee looking at category 7, it gets our attention, because if there's money in our category 7 that they want to use for safety projects in our MPO or in the TxDOT district, I think we want to talk about that versus having them assign projects. So we're not quite sure how that statewide process is working or has worked, but we want to be part of it because it may have impacts over the funding that you allocate. And so we're trying to get a little bit more detail. As we do, we'll get more information back to you next month. If it's something urgent, I'll reach out to you by email. But we want to make sure that our MPO is represented. And remember, one of our consultant teams we hired is an expert in traffic crash analysis. So we want to bring that to bear for our region, but we want to share it with the state. Because some of the things that we're doing we think are unique and can be really helpful for the state, and so for TxDOT to look at. We're not ready with that tool yet, but when we are, we'd like to feed it up into the statewide task force. But certainly our regional task force, we want to run it through them first. So again, next month we'll be back to you to have you, if you agree, set up that ad hoc committee, and that would be the safety task force for the region, and we'll give you updates on the statewide task force that's doing the very same thing. So as we get more information, I will email back out to all of you, but also our technical committee, so that they understand what the statewide task force is doing, especially if they're talking about funding, because we know that's important for us as well. So that's where we are now, and we'll give you an update as we get it.
Mayor, you had questions, I believe?
No, I didn't. I just love the idea.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No,
thought
I
you
like
had
that.
a question.
Yeah, no. That's okay.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the task force? Well, we'll wait for that. Okay. Going into item 6, any member of the committee have anything they want to say? Comments?
Yes, Chair. If
Okay.
you'd allow me, I just want to thank the board members, policy board members, that attended the I-69 unveiling for us yesterday. So it was just a section, 3.2-mile section south of Robstown, and Mayor Guajardo was there, Judge Canales was there, and we also had Chairman Zahn as well. So it was a good showing there. Just as a reminder for this MPO, we have US 77 that is being upgraded to interstate standards for I-69. We have Interstate 37 also in our MPO, and then we have State Highway 44, which is being upgraded to interstate standards as well. So all those are inside these MPO limits, so it's a pretty big deal. And then also, since the last time we met, I believe was August, just to give you a quick update on Harbor Bridge, 'cause I know you've seen construction continuing there on those towers, which we had previously stopped. So just a little history there. About 2 years ago, we had asked the developer Flatiron Dragados to replace FIG Engineering, which was the main engineer or engineer of record for the main spans. Process has gone through where they have a new engineer of record on board for the main spans, and they are pretty close to completion of design on that main span work. Since they are that close to completion of the design, construction began on those main spans in the end of July timeframe, summertime, end of July timeframe. So have you driven through there, you've seen the progress that's ongoing. A couple sections of concrete were poured on both towers, And now you see all the form work that's going out on those towers as well. So that main span work that was previously stopped has started again. And the road work here at the interchanges, the bridge direct connectors, all that has been ongoing and hasn't stopped since. So just a quick update there. Is, which will affect the timetable, is the main span construction started again this summer.
Great.
Good. Good. Okay.
Great to know the clock is ticking again,
I know.
Yes.
underway.
Ready. We're ready. Any other comments?
I think for me, with regard to the infrastructure plan, you quickly just briefed on it. You talked about potential of millions of dollars. That caught my attention. So with regard to that and potential discretionary funds that may come to this region, would you look at a similar proposal for opportunities for funding as well?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Thank you. Get the
You know,
microphone.
let's say the infrastructure gets passed
Yeah.
finally,
Yes.
and you know, this region gets its fair share of funding. Would you look at a similar process for proposals on utilizing those dollars for discretionary projects that aren't already budgeted for?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. Trying to anticipate congressional action.
Yeah.
A lot of our trade organizations, we belong to a lot of the planning and engineering and ASHTO. I mean, everyone's seeing what Congress is trying to do, but some of the numbers you see are staggering. Texas could receive up to $26 billion above what they are expecting right now from transportation. So how that filters down, it will be with the categories, the category 1 through 12. Those funding categories, we list them all in on our website and in our documents. So as TxDOT gets that dollar, there will be certainly a quick process to try to, how do you allocate those dollars? Now, some of the COVID relief dollars are, as we said earlier, are 100%. So we need to bring that into your process once we can establish how much money we have in any of the categories, whether it's coming from new money, coming from Congress money or Texas money, whatever is going to be allocated, it comes into our normal flow of process. And so because we have 25 years of projects that are in our long-range plan, we can always advance things. And so we've identified somewhere around $8 billion of projects. So we can advance lots of projects, but we would develop a whole separate process to say, okay, we got, you know, pick a number, $300 million that we got in these categories. We need to do a call for projects to figure out, does it go into our 25-year plan, the 10-year plan, which is matching TxDOT's UTP 10-year plan, and then into our 4-year transportation improvement program. It all depends on the money, the flavor of the money, how soon it drops. But right now, the big money in that, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, it's kind of still being ping-ponged back and forth in Washington. Once it pops out, then I know TxDOT's going to be looking at what does it mean to the state, putting it in all those categories, and then announce to MPOs like us, start your process to awarding them. And so we have to go through our normal process, and we'll bring that process because we'll have to amend our long-range plan, the short-range plan. We'll have to update all the financial. We'll have to do a call for projects, kind of like we did for Category 9. But when you talk everything else, that's a big process because it's hundreds of millions of dollars that we'd have to do. So long answer to it. We're waiting and seeing, and we'll react as soon as we can. My guess is we'll have an update for you next month as far as the federal funding. But again, your guess is as good as theirs as far as timing. And you know, even components. One of the things that you probably can guess, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act has the reauthorization of the transportation law. It used to be the FAST Act. We don't know what they're going to call it next. It may be the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, but they passed the law, then they have to write all the rules and regs, which takes 6 months to a year. So what does that do to funding and prioritization? As we talked earlier, there's new executive orders that we have to look at. There's new funding limitations or evaluation things we have to do to look at projects, evaluate projects, and select projects. So once they figure that out, they'll pass it down, and we'll report it up through your technical committee and also certainly here to the TPC.
Thank you.
We wish we had an answer, but.
Okay, any other comments from committee? Okay, next is item 7, update meeting. Our next transportation policy meeting will be on December 2nd, last one of the year. Ready to rock and roll into 2022 after that.
Oh.
Moving on. Okay, we're ready to adjourn. Call the meeting adjourned 2:52 p.m.
All right, thank you all.